let us let us go on. Um, we were learning the halacha about circumstances in which you are allowed to be moser someone to the authorities, and that is when a person is behaving in an illegal fashion. You can even and you live in a democratic state, you are allowed to master that person. You are allowed to report that person to the authorities. And that's, that was the basis of permitting a person to be an IRS auditor. And it's also the basis of, what the Imrei Yaakov had said, that up above, he says, Yitachen shebebedino sheyesham shilton mitukan. He says, when you live in a community or in a city or in a state where there is a fixed ruler, a governor, in barur shein chashash yahargehu, and there's no fear that they're going to execute the person who is arrested by the government. Lo shayach bo kol hachumra shenemru b'moiser. Right? None of the stringencies that we have by this law of Moser apply. That a person who is Moser does not deserve to die if he reports someone to the authorities, but the authorities are going to treat that person fairly and give him a punishment that is commensurate to the crime. And it's on that basis, the second part of this Likutim that we had started 2 days ago states as follows. Misha ragil lignov, mutar lemosra lemishtara, b'medinot she'en chashash yemisuhu o yigarem lo mita. That if a person is a regular ganav, in other words, he has a habit of stealing, and he steals things in the community, as long as you live within a government system where there's no fear that they're going to put him to death over his theft, but rather they're just going to either put him in jail, the county jail, or some other kind of punishment to incarcerate him or to make him pay. So, and that's not going to cause him to die. It's just going to cause him to be removed from the community so that he doesn't do further theft. So that would be permissible. He says, and even if, according to his appearance, he looks like a Haredi Jew, right? In other words, he may be a kleptomaniac, and he may need psychological help, or he just may be a guy who's overcome by this desire to take stuff that doesn't belong to him. Just because a guy wears the black and white garb does not make him into a tzaddik, because anyone can put on that garb. Ulam bazer ra'ui la'aso she'elas rav. He says, but it's always advisable to ask a shaila. Ve'im lefi ra'os einav nachutz hadavar l'moser or shari la'asos kain. And if, based upon the estimation of the rav of the community, it would seem that this fellow needs to be incarcerated, so then it's permitted. It's permitted to report him to the authorities. This becomes an issue, of course, in more recent years. The rabbis have become more permissive, I should say, in reporting a person who is guilty of molestation or abuse to the authorities. And it used to be, that, it was the shah-shtil attitude. We take care of our own, we'll handle this internally. And that no longer is an acceptable attitude, that you handle things internally. No, there's a reason why there are authorities, and there's and a person who commits that kind of abuse deserves to be removed from society, and also to be made an example of, that there's a zero tolerance of this kind of behavior. It took several very, very sad tragedies in order for the Jewish community to wake up to this fact that people's lives as children were destroyed by people who were in the educational system and who were guilty of doing real deep-seated harm to children, and when they grew up, the damage became much more manifest. But finally, the recognition is that people who do commit harm to others, especially to innocent children, do need to be incarcerated and removed from society. Okay. All right. Yeah.
Rabbi, just something getting back to a point you just made about the ganaf, that if he's stealing within the community or whatever, and then you can report him to the authorities. I don't understand why that would be different from where two particular individuals or have issues, or there could be even theft involved or anything else, and they have to go to Beit Din. Can't they go to secular court?
Why can't they go to secular court?
Yeah, because you're talking about, specifically with that example you said about ganaf, that could be reported to the authorities, which would go through the secular courts. But right. When two individuals have a business situation where it could be a similar type of situation, they have to go to Beit Din.
Right. So the difference is whether it's criminal or civil. And that distinction is drawn even in secular society as well. Next week's parsha is parsha. What's this parsha? Shoftim. And so the Torah starts off with the words Shoftim v'shotrim titein lecha b'chol she'arecha. Appoint judges and officers in all of your gates. So when the Jewish people live autonomously, we can have both judges to adjudicate disputes, financial disputes between two parties, and to have our own police force to be able to enforce people who are acting in a criminal way, by just wantonly going into other people's property and stealing, or who are committing acts of violence. There were prisons and there were methods of incarceration in ancient Israel, whether it was the stocks in the city square, or whether there was flogging. These were methods of punishment that were placed upon individuals who were behaving in a wayward criminal fashion. So we don't have the ability to do that anymore. And quite frankly, in the diaspora, would we want to do it? Who wants to have their own police force to be able to police criminals in our society? So it's for that reason that we draw that distinction here in halacha as well. When it comes to shoftim, where it's possible to create binding arbitration situations, you're obligated to, according to halacha, whenever possible, to treat two Jews who are in a dispute to go according to Torah law instead of going according to secular law. However, when you're dealing with policing, that's something totally different. We don't have the ability to police anymore. Okay. So let's go on to this next piece, which is really just a reflection on this halacha that we all intuitively know to be true, that if someone is pursuing you, and trying to kill you, you have a right to stop them, even with lethal force. And that's really the whole basis of the halacha of rodef that we've been learning up until now, is that this halacha that if a person is about to master you to an evil authority, an evil regime that might kill you because they discover that you have assets, you're allowed to kill that person before they inform on you. And so that's the din of rodef. And I guess the Likutim over here wants to comment on the din of rodef in general. And the classic case or sort of a prevalent case of rodef that occurs even in today's world is as follows. Lefichach me'uberet. If a woman is pregnant, a woman is pregnant and mikashele laid, and she's going through a very difficult labor, which may present a threat to her health. Mutar lachtocha ubar b'me'eha bein b'sam uvein b'yad. It is permitted to commit an abortion on the child, even if it means, actively killing the fetus, mipnei shehu kirodef achareha lohorga, because we view the fetus as a rodef. Now, this is not such a simple halacha, because you have to append to this halacha the idea that qualitatively an unborn fetus does not have the same rights and status of humanity as a human being who is already outside of the womb. And that becomes apparent with the following statement. The imhotzi rosho eino ginbo. But that's only before the fetus emerges from the womb. But once the fetus's head crowns and he starts to emerge from the womb, and then the woman's life is in danger because she's hemorrhaging and she's in danger of dying if we don't do something to stop the bleeding. And perhaps the only way to stop the hemorrhaging is by killing the fetus at that point. Then that is prohibited, because that's actually homicide. She'ein dochin nefesh mipnei nefesh, v'zeh tiv'o shel olam. And the reason is because we are not permitted to take one life in order to save another life. At that point, we don't view the child anymore as a pursuing entity, but rather the child is just striving to survive. And if the child is striving to survive and the woman is striving to survive, they are both equally weighted. And this is, you have to let nature do its course. And the reason why, when the fetus has not yet emerged, you are allowed to kill the fetus and perform an abortion, even though the fetus is considered to be a living entity, because even though it's alive, but it doesn't have the status of what's called a nefesh, a full-fledged human being. And how do we know this, that the fetus does not have the status of a full-fledged human being? The haraya, the proof is, the hanogef isha haravi yatsu yiladeha v'mesu mishalim dimei havlados ve'ein shem rodseach unisa olav. That when a person causes a woman to miscarry, let's say a person punches a woman in the stomach and causes her to miscarry. So the halacha in the Torah, which is in Parshas, I believe, Parshas Mishpatim, it says that the man who injured the woman and caused her to miscarry has to compensate her financially, but is not taken to task for committing murder. He does not have the status of a murderer, is not subject to the death penalty. But he has taken a life, but he doesn't get the death penalty for having taken a life. So it's one of those in-between kinds of situations. Is a fetus a living creature? Yes. But is it a living creature for which the penalty of killing it is death? No. So therefore, when a person performs an abortion, whether on herself or whether it's a doctor performing an abortion, they are committing some kind of homicide, but not a homicide that rises to the level of being liable for the death penalty. And it's for that reason that if the child is presenting a threat to the woman's health, we are allowed to label that child with the status of a rodef and are allowed to kill the child before the child kills the mother. So that's where the term rodef is used in cases of abortion. And this, of course, is a very controversial issue today. I got involved in the fray a couple of years ago when doing work for the RCA. The RCA came out with a statement after New York had passed a more liberal, or was proposing to pass a more liberal law about abortion to permit late-term abortion, and or to remove any restrictions on late-term abortion. And the RCA came out with a statement condemning that. And I was quoted in my statement as saying that this, we should not condone murder or something to that effect. And so I got involved with a a controversy because some rabbis from the left came out against me, saying that we have to recognize a woman's rights and that yada yada yada. You know the whole story, right? So if you're interested, you can do a Google on Jewish Journal, which is the newspaper out of Los Angeles. The Jewish Journal asked me to correspond with these people. They're part of what we would call the Open Orthodoxy movement, which is, sort of a left-wing kind of orthodoxy, which is sort of has filled the gap between a more liberal conservative Judaism and Orthodox Judaism. And you can see some interesting back and forth parries and thrusts. Okay.
If I can ask one quick question.
Yeah.
I might be confusing it with a Gemara concept, but is there something about until 30 days? So does a newborn or not even yet born have a different status?
I think you mean 40 days.
Was it 40 days? Okay, 40 days maybe. I thought it was a month, but I thought 40 days was from conception. And I thought there was 30 days is the baby going to survive or not, but I might be mixed up.
Yeah, so there is this argument that before 40 days, the prohibition of committing an abortion is not as serious as once the child has gestated for 40 days or more. Because after 40 days, the Gemara says that the child transitions from being an embryo into a fetus. And the definition of a fetus is that it starts to assume human form.
Sorry, Rabbi, what I'm referring to is after birth, 30 days following the actual complete birth.
Okay. Right. So the truth is, no, there is no distinction drawn in halacha between a child that is under 30 days old and a child that is over 30 days old. In either way, that's homicide if you kill the child.
Right.
What you are referring to is when a child is born with a congenital defect that is so severe,
God forbid,
that the doctors do not feel that the child will survive.
It's a viability issue.
Right. The child is not viable. In that situation, the Gemara says that if you kill such a mortally ill child, then you have not committed homicide. You cannot receive the death penalty.
And I guess particularly, again, if somehow that was a Rodev situation in combination.
Yes, interesting point. In other words, if you're saying that if the child is in some way threatening the mother's life, even after it's crowned, but you've already determined that the child is not viable, then yes, it would seem that you would be allowed to kill the child in that situation.
Right.
I guess you'd have to have had made some kind of amniocentesis and other testing,
Of course,
that this child is not going to survive more than 30 days. And then you would be allowed to consider that child to be not a viable life. And then if and only if it presents a threat to the mother, then you'd be allowed to abort the child even after it started to emerge from the womb.
I know it's a nuance, but thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, sure. In the Makoros, he brings from the Chavos Yor from Rav Bachrach, who's back in the 17th or 18th century, Shedan Odos Isha Meuberes, Sherotza Ligmoa Avkat Rochel Sheyapstik Hiriona Ein Sham Sheherich. He deals with the shaila of a woman who wishes to take a medication that will cause her to abort the fetus. And then he quotes from Shilas Yaivitz, Rav Yaakov Emden, and he writes that Begam be'uber kasher hayatzad lahakel l'tzorach gadol, there would be room to be lenient when even you're dealing with a viable fetus to commit an abortion. Kol kama delo akar afilu eno mishum pikuach nefesh. Even when the issue is not an issue of pikuach nefesh, of saving physically her life, sometimes it is still permitted to perform an abortion. Ela lahatzil la meira'aso shegorim la ke'iv gadol. If the child is causing her extreme pain, sometimes there is a heter to perform an abortion as well. B'tzarech iyun ad kan l'shana, and this requires further analysis. Va'ayin sham le'inyan mamzer mashakasav bazeh And he also addresses the issue of when you know that the child is going to be a mamzer, are there any mitigating circumstances which would permit an abortion? Od kasav sham besoch devar v'zelushanu v'ibra litzorach af lahotzi zer levatola lahashchiso al haaretz shari. He says that many times we can justify performing a serious sins, such as allowing a man to destroy his seed, when it comes to being able to verify certain tests. If you need to verify a medical test, you can even ask a man to ejaculate and cause him to spill his seed. So you see that shmamina de isser chamer zehuter bichlolo eitzel tzarech mitzvah. If you can help to do a mitzvah, and in the course, sometimes it involves destroying seed or even performing an abortion. Sometimes that it can be justified. And related to that, he says, "U'b'inyan isser hapola be'uber shu pachos me'arboim yom." And regarding the issue of performing an abortion on a child that is less than 40 days old, that we started off by saying, he says there are other tshuvas about that. And basically, there's an entire genre of medical halacha that deals with the issue of abortion. And so we're not going to get into that today. That's really outside the rubric of Hilchos Choshen Mishpat, but it is an illustration of where the laws of Moser apply most prevalently in the real world today, because not Moser, but rather Rodef, excuse me, the idea of a Rodef, of trying to protect yourself from an entity that is trying to cause you harm.
I was actually thinking there is a Moser application. I mean, Henry Morgenthaler and perform abortions, and can you report them to the authorities and all that sort of stuff. So even then, there's a concept that could be extended to you're aware of something happening, and it's against the law. Don't know. I mean, this one is against halakha too, but an instance where something is within halakha but against the law, are you allowed to report it? Or something like that. It just came to mind as soon as the rabbi said it's not really Moser. One could fashion a case, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, there are plenty of situations where a person is acting within the law, but isn't within halacha, but is violating the law. What if I bootleg liquor and I don't have a license? There are plenty of situations where you can come up with, are you allowed to maser on such a person? Well, I mean, you have to create an argument as to why that it would benefit society to maser on this person. Either because you feel he's going to create a chilul Hashem once he is caught, or you feel he's doing something hazardous either to himself or to others. That would be another reason that you can report him. But just to report him for the sake of being a good citizen is not sanctioned by halacha. I don't know whether I want to start a new halacha today. I'm going to be out of town next week, so we're not going to be learning next week. And I'm not sure about the following week. I will let you know as soon as I have any information. But we're going to take a break now, so we will not be resuming next week. We'll take a break for at least 1 week, and possibly a little bit longer. So let me wish you all a Chodesh Tov, a good Elul, and Mirz Hashem will resume as soon as possible. Okay. Any final points?
Rabbi, I just want to ask: is there any tentative plans? Are we still far away from that yet? Of where we can be back in person together?
I think we're still tentative. The thinking is that we're thinking that maybe after the Chagim we'll be able to reconstitute, but we really don't know what's going to be. We because of this Delta variant. I mean, Canada is relatively safe right now compared to what's going on in the U.S. and in Israel, but we assume that at some point it's going to hit us as well, the Delta variant, and we may have to hunker down a little bit more. So that's the reason why we're proceeding very, very cautiously, and we're really not prepared to make any commitments yet. We are doing some shiurim live. We're doing. Is there a desire among this chevra to get together live yet? If there is, I'm willing to consider it. You can put in your thoughts in our WhatsApp chat group if you like, and see, and let me know. Wayne, of course, you'd have to fly in from Yerushalayim on a daily basis, but it's
I'm hoping that you're still going to do the Zoom when you go live.
Yeah,
do you think you will?
Either way, I do anticipate that we'll continue with Zoom, even if we get back together.
It's the old hybrid model that they keep talking about now in the workplace as well.
Yeah, we'll do the hybrid model.
The way life is now.
Yeah. Are you still in town, Wayne, or did you go back?
I came back 2 days ago. I'm now in Eretz HaKodesh and experiencing the Delta variant. Go from one exciting pandemic to another.
And you're not only closer to the holiness, but you're also closer to Shabbos.
Did you have to go in? Did you have to go into bidud, into isolation?
Well, they test at the airport, and you're in bidud for as long as it takes to get your results, which for me was when I woke up. So.
Oh, was that serology, or was that
PCR? PCR.
But that's because you got vaccinated in Israel, right?
Yeah, if you're vaccinated, you only have to get a test at the airport, and then you're free. I think that foreigners who come in need the serology test to show that they have not been exposed in the last few weeks.
Got it. Okay. No, because I may end up going to Israel with Shlomo, so we'll take him.
Well, you can get into Israel with family, but I hear they are cutting off red countries, and I just heard yesterday there was 30,000 applications a day to enter.
Wow. Amazing. Okay.
At least people want to come. Thank God.
Yeah. Listen.
Hopefully everybody will be here soon.
Amen. Shabbat shalom, everyone. We'll talk.